Hey guys, welcome to DataSci. In this video, we're going to talk about one-sided limits and two-sided limits. What's the concept of one-sided limits and two-sided limits? And how to find one-sided limits at a graph. For example, suppose we have a function like g of x, and we're going to find g of x, one-sided limit of g of x at 0. So we have the limit of g of x as x approaches to 0 from the right. We have 0 here, and when we get closer and closer to 0 from the right, we get closer and closer to -2 from above. So we have -2. Or when we get closer and closer to 0 from the left, when we get closer and closer to 0 from the left, we get closer and closer to -1 from above. Notice that the value of functions of g of x at 0 is -1. So the value of function at 0 is equal to -1 because we have a solid circle here. And what about points 2? What's the one-sided limits of g of x at point 2? So we have the limit of g of x as x approaches to 2 from the right. When we get closer and closer to 2 from the right, we get closer and closer to 0. And what's the limit of g of x as x approaches to 2 from the left? When we get closer and closer to 2 from the left, we get closer and closer to 2 from below. And what's the value of these functions at point 2? The value of g of x at point 2 is equal to 1 because we have a solid circle here. And the next example is f of t. What's the limit of f of t at different points like 0, 4, 12, and 16? The limit of f of t as t approaches to 0 from the right. We don't have left limit at 0. When we get closer and closer to 0 from the right, we get closer and closer to 150 from below. And what's the limit of f of t as t approaches to 4 from the left? And we don't have right limit at 4. When we get closer and closer to 4 from the left, we get closer and closer to 75 from above. The next point is 12. What's the limit of f of t as t approaches to 12 from right? When we get closer and closer to 12 from the right, we get closer and closer to 300 from below. And what's the limit of f of t when t approaches to 16 from the left? When we get closer and closer to 16 from the left, we get closer and closer to 165 from above. And in the last functions, f of x, we have 0.1 here, and -2 here, and 3 here. So, what's the left limit and right limit at 0.1? The limit of f of x as x approaches to 1 from the right is equal to, when we get closer and closer to 1 from the right, we get closer and closer to 3 from below, is equal to 3. And what's the limit of f of x as x approaches to 1 from the left? And we get closer and closer to 1 from the left, we get closer and closer to -2 from above. That's it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. Thank you for watching, and make sure to subscribe to my channel for more tutorials.